This is not one of those. This has what you need.
A beautiful soul full of light, ambition and kindness. That's how Tamilore Odunsi is described by her family.
Hey guys, spend 24 hours with me in Dallas.
She spread joy through her content, they say. On TikTok, she shared her life as a Brit in Texas, where she was studying to be a nurse.
And then I like to do active recall with my whiteboard.
Days before she was due to graduate, the 23-year-old was found stabbed to death on her kitchen floor. She was discovered by Houston police officers who had gone to her flat to check on her. Her housemate, 40-year-old Chester Grant, has been charged with her murder. According to officers, his neck is bandaged because he tried to take his own life. He appeared at a court hearing over the weekend.
The allegations in this case allege
What is the point of white roses when I specifically asked for red?
You could always paint the roses red.
What an odd thing to say.
I'm just 2 weeks away from graduation. Elizabeth Tammy Odunsi beamed at her phone camera, her eyes bright with anticipation. The 23-year-old nursing student's TikTok followers showered her with congratulatory messages as she shared plans for post-graduation celebrations. Her infectious smile and genuine excitement captured the milestone moment perfectly, the culmination of years studying abroad, thousands of miles from her London home. 5 days later, Houston police officers knocked on an apartment door. No answer. Blood on the concrete patio caught their attention. Breaking inside, they discovered a scene that shattered the promise of that joyful video. Tammy's body on the kitchen floor, multiple stab wounds marking her final moments. In another room lay her 40-year-old roommate, Chester Lamar Grant, also wounded but alive. The apartment they'd shared for just 2 months had transformed into a crime scene. The cause? Not a home invasion, not a random act of violence. Something far more unexpected. What could possibly drive someone to murder a young woman on the verge of achieving her dreams? The answer would stun investigators and followers alike. The dispute that ended Tammy's life wasn't about money, romance, or long-standing hatred. It was about cats. The brutal killing of this vibrant TikTok personality, known to her 30,000 followers as Tammy Dollars, raises disturbing questions about the people we live with and the seemingly minor conflicts that can explode into violence. Her story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the greatest danger isn't lurking in dark alleys, but sharing our living space. How could an argument between roommates transform into murder in mere minutes? Before I continue with Tammy's tragic story, I want to welcome you to Crime Scene Exposed, where we examine the most infamous crimes, baffling disappearances, disturbing confessions, and twisted criminal minds from around the world. From high-profile murder trials to cold cases that still haunt investigators, we uncover the truth behind the crimes that shook the world. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our detailed investigations, gripping storytelling, and in-depth analysis. And if you find Tammy's story as shocking as I do, please hit that like button. It helps more people discover her story and the important lessons it contains. Elizabeth Tamilore Odunsi wasn't just another nursing student. At 17, she made a decision that would define her path, leaving behind the familiar streets of London to pursue her dreams across the Atlantic. The journey from the United Kingdom to Houston, Texas, represented more than just physical distance. It was a leap of faith for a teenager determined to build her future in healthcare. Enrolling at Texas Woman's University, Tammy embraced the challenges of adapting to American culture while pursuing her nursing degree. The transition wasn't easy. New educational systems, different social norms, and the weight of being thousands of miles from family. Yet she approached these obstacles with remarkable resilience, quickly establishing herself as a dedicated student with unwavering focus. Her passion for nursing wasn't merely academic. Friends and classmates noted her genuine compassion and natural caregiving instincts. She particularly loved working with children and often spoke about making a difference in pediatric care. Her professors recognized her commitment, watching as she progressed through the rigorous nursing program with determination and excellence. As Tammy Dollars on TikTok, she built a community of over 30,000 followers who tuned in for her authentic content about nursing school struggles, study tips, and glimpses into her daily life. Her videos resonated with other international students and aspiring healthcare workers who saw themselves in her journey. She didn't just share successes, she was refreshingly honest about challenges, creating content that made others feel less alone in their own educational paths. Her final TikTok post on April 21, 2025, captured her excitement about graduation being just 2 weeks away. She spoke animatedly about planned celebrations and holidays, the joy of achievement evident in her expression. The video now stands as a haunting reminder of dreams left unfulfilled. Faith formed the foundation of Tammy's life. Described by loved ones as a devoted Christian, she drew strength from her spiritual beliefs, particularly during difficult moments far from home. This faith community provided her with support and connection in Houston. Her family ties remained strong despite the distance. Her sister Georgina spoke of their close relationship and how proud the family was of Tammy's ambition and kindness. They supported her American journey while maintaining those vital connections across the ocean. At 23, everything seemed aligned for Tammy's success. Just days away from graduation, she stood at the threshold of her professional life. Job prospects, continuing education opportunities, and the chance to finally practice the profession she had worked so hard to enter, all were within reach. Her future in nursing wasn't just bright, it was imminent. No one could have predicted that a roommate arrangement, meant to be temporary housing during her final semester, would tragically end everything she had worked for. The decision that ultimately led to Tammy's death seemed inconsequential at the time, a simple housing arrangement to carry her through the final months of her nursing program. While the exact circumstances that brought Tammy and Chester Lamar Grant together as roommates remain unclear, what we do know is that their cohabitation began approximately 2 months before the fatal incident. Chester Grant, a 40-year-old Houston resident, had no apparent prior connection to Tammy before they began sharing living space. The 17-year age gap between them wasn't necessarily unusual in rental situations, particularly in a university city, where housing arrangements often form out of necessity rather than friendship. For Tammy, the apartment likely represented nothing more than affordable accommodation during her final semester, a practical solution as she focused on completing her degree. Their South Side Houston apartment became home to both Tammy and Grant, along with their respective cats. The pets would later become the center of a dispute with deadly consequences, but in the beginning, they were just part of the ordinary backdrop of shared living space. The brevity of their roommate relationship, just 8 weeks, raises questions about how well they knew each other before agreeing to live together. In today's housing market, thorough vetting of potential roommates often takes a backseat to immediate housing needs, especially for students facing tight budgets and limited options. Were there warning signs in those 2 months? No public records indicate previous police calls to the apartment or documented disputes between them. Friends and followers of Tammy's TikTok account noted no mentions of roommate troubles in her content. If tensions existed, she kept them private, continuing to post positive content about her upcoming graduation and future plans. The tragic irony of the timing cannot be overstated. After successfully navigating 6 years in the United States, overcoming cultural adjustments, academic challenges, and the isolation of being far from family, Tammy was mere days from completing her journey. The housing arrangement with Grant was, by all appearances, meant to be nothing more than a short-term solution until she received her nursing degree. Had graduation been just 1 week earlier, or had she chosen different housing for those final months, Elizabeth Tamilor O'Dunsey might be practicing nursing today. Instead, a temporary living situation with a man she barely knew became the setting for her final moments. The decision to share an apartment with Chester Grant wasn't reckless or unusual. Countless students make similar arrangements every day. That's what makes this case particularly disturbing. It wasn't an obviously dangerous choice, but rather an ordinary decision with extraordinary consequences. As Tammy prepared for graduation ceremonies, ordered her cap and gown, and planned celebrations, she couldn't have known that the apartment she'd soon leave behind would become the place she'd never leave at all. The day of the murder, April 26, 2025, began as an ordinary Saturday in the South Side Houston apartment complex where Tammy O'Dunsey lived. The modest residential building blended with countless others across the city, a place where people's lives intersected briefly in hallways and parking lots before retreating behind closed doors. For most residents, it was simply another weekend. For Tammy, it would be her last. The exact timeline of events that morning remains partially reconstructed through neighbor accounts and police reports. Tammy was likely focused on her upcoming graduation, now less than 2 weeks away. Her social media had gone quiet since her excited TikTok post on April 21st, perhaps because she was busy with final exams and graduation preparations. Chester Grant was also home that morning. The 40-year-old roommate had been sharing the apartment with Tammy for approximately 2 months. Their day-to-day interactions had apparently been unremarkable enough that Tammy never mentioned any significant conflicts on her social media platforms. What we know with certainty is that sometime during the morning hours, a disagreement erupted between the roommates. The subject of their argument seems almost trivial in retrospect: their cats. According to police reports, the dispute centered around the pets they each owned. Whether it involved feeding, behavior, territorial issues, or some other pet-related matter hasn't been specified in public records. What began as a verbal disagreement escalated with shocking speed. Words turned to actions, and at some point Grant obtained a knife. In the confined space of their apartment kitchen, he stabbed Tammy multiple times. The young nursing student, just days from achieving her dream, fought for her life, but sustained fatal injuries. The violence didn't end with Tammy. After the attack, Grant turned the weapon on himself, inflicting at least one significant stab wound to his own neck, along with other self-inflicted injuries. Unlike Tammy, however, he survived these wounds. The apartment fell silent. Neighbors later reported hearing raised voices, but nothing that prompted immediate calls to police, a common and tragic feature in many domestic homicide cases where the final escalation happens quickly and without the prolonged disturbance that might alert others. Hours passed before anyone realized something was wrong. The precise catalyst for concern remains unclear. Perhaps Tammy missed a call or appointment, or someone noticed an unusual silence from her typically active social media accounts. What we do know is that someone became concerned enough about her welfare to request police intervention. Later that day, Houston Police Department officers arrived at the apartment complex to conduct a welfare check. They knocked on the door but received no response from inside. Standing at the threshold, they might have left empty-handed, a routine check with no answer, except for one critical detail: blood visible on the rear concrete patio. This alarming discovery prompted officers to enter the apartment. Inside, they encountered a scene of violence that told the story of the morning's events. Tammy lay on the kitchen floor, multiple stab wounds marking her body. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Her promising life ended at 23. In a separate bedroom, officers found Chester Lamar Grant. Unlike Tammy, he was still alive despite his self-inflicted wounds. Emergency medical services transported him to a nearby hospital in critical condition, where medical staff worked to save the life of a man who had just taken another. The apartment, which should have been merely a footnote in Tammy's journey, temporary housing before she moved on to her career, instead became a crime scene. Yellow tape replaced graduation decorations. Investigators photographed and documented the space where a disagreement about pets had somehow escalated to murder. As news began to spread through the apartment complex and beyond, the shocking contrast became clear. The vibrant young woman who had shared her excitement about graduation just days earlier on TikTok was gone, her future erased in minutes during what should have been an insignificant roommate disagreement about their cats. This case raises important questions about roommate safety. Have you ever experienced a dangerous living situation or know someone who has? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What warning signs do you think people should watch for? And let us know what state or country you're watching from. It's always fascinating to see how our crime scene exposed community spans the globe. Your experiences might help others recognize potential dangers in their own living situations before they escalate to violence. The Houston Police Department's investigation began the moment officers discovered Tammy's body on April 26, 2025. The kitchen floor where she lay told part of the story. Multiple stab wounds indicated a violent attack rather than an accident or medical emergency. Blood evidence throughout the apartment suggested a chaotic sequence of events, with particular attention paid to the blood on the rear concrete patio that had first alerted officers something was wrong. Forensic teams meticulously documented the scene, photographing and collecting evidence that would later prove crucial in understanding what had transpired. The kitchen, where Tammy's body was found, became the primary focus. Investigators noted the position of furniture, potential defensive wounds on Tammy's body, and the apparent path of movement during the attack. The knife used in the stabbing was recovered at the scene. While police haven't publicly released specific details about the weapon, it was presumably a kitchen knife accessible to both roommates, an ordinary household item transformed into a deadly weapon during their dispute. In a separate bedroom, officers had discovered Chester Lamar Grant with at least one significant stab wound to his neck, along with other self-inflicted injuries. At the hospital, medical staff worked to stabilize Grant. His neck wound was particularly severe, requiring immediate surgical intervention. While details of his medical treatment remain private, we know that doctors were able to save his life despite the serious nature of his self-inflicted injuries. As Grant received medical care, investigators continued building their case. They interviewed neighbors who reported hearing raised voices from the apartment earlier that day, though none had witnessed the actual attack. Police also examined both Tammy's and Grant's personal effects, including phones and computers, seeking any evidence of previous conflicts or communications that might explain the deadly escalation. The investigation quickly determined that the fatal stabbing resulted from an argument between the roommates over their cats. This seemingly trivial dispute had somehow escalated to lethal violence, a fact that would later shock the community and Tammy's followers. While Grant recovered in the hospital under police guard, legal proceedings began. On May 2, 2025, approximately 1 week after the murder, Chester Lamar Grant was formally arrested and charged with the murder of Elizabeth Tamilor O'Dunsey. The timing was particularly poignant. Had she lived, Tammy would have been preparing for her graduation ceremony around this same time.
Stabbed dozens of times, and her family says she was just days away from graduating.
So sad. Chester Grant is accused of killing Elizabeth O'Dunsey at an apartment complex on Goforth Street near Cullen Boulevard. Residents who live there say they were roommates but did not know each other before they moved in.
ABC 13's Micah Hatfield is reporting live downtown. And Micah, what are investigators revealing to you about this case?
Well, first of all, Chester Grant is still in custody tonight. These two lived in an apartment building that was off-site student housing. They paired roommates randomly, we're told by people who live in the building. So they ended up a 40-year-old man and a 23-year-old woman living in the same apartment, sharing common spaces, and they didn't know each other. We've now learned that Grant had a violent criminal past. It's unclear if the victim in this case knew that.
The allegations in this case allege he stabbed his female roommate 28 times, killing her over some disagreement over his cat.
A situation the magistrate referred to as brutal. 23-year-old Elizabeth O'Dunsey found by police stabbed to death on April 26th in the kitchen she shared with her roommate Chester Grant, police say. Notice the bandages on Grant's neck in his mugshot. During the welfare check, they also found Grant in his bedroom with several stab wounds that investigators believe could have been self-inflicted. Both were said to be students. She was set to graduate from Texas Women's University with a nursing degree last Sunday, and he was a student at Fordham University, according to a court hearing. People who also live in this off-campus student housing say the police were out there the previous night for a fight between the two. Houston police confirm they've been called out multiple times.
He has multiple arrests and convictions out of Washington for violence, including domestic violence, violating protective.
A judge set Grant's bail at $500,000, a substantial amount reflecting the serious nature of the charges and potential flight risk. Grant remained in custody, his hospital bed exchanged for a cell, as he awaited trial for taking the life of his young roommate. As the legal process moved forward, the ripple effects of Tammy's death spread through multiple communities. Texas Women's University, where she was just days from graduating with her nursing degree, issued a formal statement expressing profound sadness at the loss of a promising student. University officials highlighted Tammy's courage in moving to the United States at 17 and adapting to a new culture and academic environment. The university quickly mobilized support services for students affected by the tragedy. Counseling was made available to Tammy's classmates and friends, many of whom were struggling to process how their peer wouldn't be walking across the graduation stage with them. Some professors who had taught Tammy throughout her nursing program spoke of her dedication and the loss not just to her family, but to the healthcare profession she would never join. The nursing department held a small memorial service where classmates shared memories of study sessions, clinical rotations, and Tammy's infectious optimism, even during the most challenging coursework. Her empty chair at what would have been her graduation ceremony served as a stark reminder of her absence. Beyond the university, the broader Houston community responded with shock and sympathy. Local news outlets covered the story, highlighting the tragic timing so close to Tammy's graduation and the seemingly minor dispute that led to her death. Community forums discussed the case as a cautionary tale about roommate arrangements and conflict resolution. The international dimension of the tragedy added another layer of complexity. As a British citizen who had made Houston her home for 6 years, Tammy's death created jurisdictional questions about the repatriation of her remains. British consular officials became involved, working with Tammy's family to navigate the process of bringing her body home to London. Throughout these official proceedings and community responses, one reality remained unchanged. A vibrant 23-year-old with a promising future had been killed over what appeared to be a trivial disagreement about pets, days before she would have achieved her dream of becoming a nurse. The news of Tammy's death spread rapidly across social media platforms, creating a wave of shock and grief among her 30,000 TikTok followers. Her account, once filled with nursing school updates and glimpses into her daily life, transformed overnight into a digital memorial where strangers and friends alike gathered to process their disbelief. Comments flooded her final video, the one where she excitedly discussed her upcoming graduation. What had been congratulatory messages just days earlier now became expressions of heartbreak and disbelief. "I can't believe you're gone," wrote one follower. "You were so close to your dream." Another commented, "I watched your journey for years. This doesn't feel real." The contrast between her joyful final post and the tragic news created a particularly poignant digital footprint. The timestamp on her last TikTok, just 5 days before her death, made the loss feel immediate and raw to her online community. Many followers shared how Tammy had inspired their own educational journeys, particularly other international students who saw themselves in her story of pursuing dreams far from home. Within 48 hours of the news breaking, Tammy's sister Georgina O'Dunsey established a GoFundMe campaign to help with the substantial costs of repatriating her body to the United Kingdom. The campaign description highlighted Tammy's ambition and kindness, emphasizing the family's desire to bring her home for a proper funeral and burial in London. The response was overwhelming. The fundraiser quickly surpassed its initial goal, with donations coming from classmates, professors, followers, and even strangers moved by her story. Many donors left messages describing how Tammy had impacted them, whether through personal interactions or through her social media presence. "Your study tips helped me pass my nursing exams," wrote one donor. "I never met you, but you made a difference in my life." Friends and classmates from Texas Woman's University shared more personal tributes. One nursing student described how Tammy had stayed late to help her practice clinical skills before an important exam. Another recalled Tammy's unwavering optimism during particularly challenging courses. "Even during finals week, she would bring coffee for everyone and remind us why we wanted to be nurses in the first place," the classmate wrote. Several of her professors contributed to the GoFundMe, adding professional perspectives on the loss. "Elizabeth would have been an exceptional nurse," wrote one faculty member. "Her compassion was genuine, her clinical skills impressive, and her dedication to patient care evident in everything she did." As the news cycle continued, Tammy's TikTok account became a gathering place for discussions about roommate safety, international student support, and the fragility of life. Followers created compilation videos of her most inspiring moments, sharing them with hashtags like #RememberingTammy and #HerDreamLives. Perhaps most moving was how her final video transformed from an ordinary update into something profound. The excitement in her voice, as she discussed graduation plans, now carried additional weight. Her words, "I'm just 2 weeks away from graduation," became a haunting reminder of dreams interrupted, a digital time capsule preserving both her joy and, unknowingly, her final message to the world. Through these online tributes and memorials, Tammy's digital presence continued even after her physical life had ended, ensuring that her story and impact would not be forgotten. In a bittersweet ceremony that left few dry eyes, Tammy's sister Georgina O'Dunsey traveled from London to Texas to accept her nursing degree posthumously. Texas Woman's University arranged a special moment during the graduation ceremony where Tammy's name was called, followed by a moment of silence. Georgina, dressed in black but wearing Tammy's graduation stole, walked across the stage to receive the diploma her sister had worked 6 years to earn. The certificate now hangs in the O'Dunsey family home in London, a painful reminder of dreams fulfilled yet cruelly cut short by senseless violence.
County Jail tonight with the latest from investigators. Orko?
It's been 1 week since this deadly stabbing, and while Houston police are still investigating, homicide detectives tell me that this all stemmed from an argument between the suspect and the victim about their cats. I'm also told the British nursing student would have graduated this weekend. It's a quiet Saturday at this apartment on Goforth Street on Houston's south side, but just a week earlier on the afternoon of April 26th, Houston...
Tammy's tragic death highlights a rarely discussed danger, violence between roommates. While we often focus on relationship violence or random attacks, the reality is that shared living spaces can become danger zones when conflicts escalate without proper resolution mechanisms. Statistics on roommate violence specifically are limited, often folded into broader domestic violence categories. However, research indicates that disputes between non-romantic cohabitants account for a significant percentage of homicides in shared living situations. College students and young adults are particularly vulnerable, as they frequently enter housing arrangements with people they barely know, driven by financial necessity rather than careful selection. The warning signs of potentially dangerous roommate situations aren't always obvious. Unlike abusive romantic relationships, which often follow recognizable patterns, roommate conflicts can appear suddenly and escalate rapidly. However, certain behaviors should raise concern: excessive anger over minor issues, inability to compromise, invasion of personal space, and previous conflicts that resulted in property damage or threats. In Tammy's case, we don't know if there were previous arguments that might have served as warning signs. What we do know is that a disagreement about pets, something that might seem trivial, escalated to deadly violence. This underscores how seemingly minor disputes can become dangerous when proper conflict resolution skills are absent. Effective conflict resolution strategies are essential life skills, particularly in shared living situations. These include setting clear boundaries and expectations at the beginning of a roommate relationship, addressing small issues before they grow into larger conflicts, using I statements rather than accusatory language, taking cooling-off periods during heated discussions, involving neutral third parties when conflicts seem unresolvable. For students living away from home, especially international students like Tammy, resources exist but are often underutilized. Most universities offer mediation services for student housing disputes, counseling centers that can help with conflict management, and residential advisors trained to intervene in problematic situations. International student offices provide additional support for those navigating cultural differences in communication and conflict styles. Background checks, while not foolproof, can provide crucial information before entering a living arrangement. Many housing applications now include optional background screening, but students often skip this step due to cost or time constraints. A basic check might reveal previous violent incidents or concerning patterns of behavior that could inform housing decisions. Safety planning isn't just for those in abusive relationships. Anyone in a shared living situation should consider having emergency contacts easily accessible, knowing the quickest exits from the residence, establishing check-in protocols with friends or family, understanding when and how to involve property management or police. Universities bear particular responsibility for international students who face unique vulnerabilities. These students often lack local support networks, may be unfamiliar with local resources and legal systems, and sometimes face language or cultural barriers when seeking help. Tammy's case demonstrates how international students can be particularly isolated when problems arise. Institutions can strengthen protection by creating specific housing guidance for international students, offering cultural orientation that includes conflict resolution norms, establishing regular check-ins throughout the academic year, providing emergency housing options when living situations become unsafe, developing peer mentor programs that connect new international students with those who understand the challenges. Tammy's death wasn't inevitable. With better awareness, resources, and intervention strategies, similar tragedies might be prevented. Her story serves as a powerful reminder that we must take roommate conflicts seriously and ensure that those living far from home have the support and safety nets they need. Elizabeth Tammy O'Dunsey lived just 23 years, yet her impact extends far beyond her abbreviated life. As a young woman who left London at 17 to pursue her dreams in America, she embodied courage and determination. Through her nursing studies and TikTok presence, she inspired thousands with her authenticity, work ethic, and genuine care for others. Her tragic death has forced uncomfortable but necessary conversations about safety in shared living spaces. College campuses across the country have cited her case when discussing roommate conflict resolution and housing safety. What happened to Tammy has become a sobering reminder that even seemingly minor disagreements can escalate with devastating consequences when proper intervention is absent. The timing of her murder, mere days before graduation, adds a particularly heartbreaking dimension to her story. After 6 years of dedication, overcoming cultural adjustments and academic challenges, Tammy stood at the threshold of her professional life. The nursing cap she never wore and the diploma she never received represent not just her personal loss, but the patients who would never benefit from her care. Tammy's legacy lives on through the lives she touched and the awareness her story has created. Though she never had the chance to save lives as a nurse, her story may now save others by highlighting dangers that too often remain unaddressed until tragedy strikes. Tammy's story reminds us how quickly conflicts can turn deadly. If this case has impacted you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might benefit from these safety lessons. What do you think could have prevented this tragedy? Let me know in the comments below. The conversation about roommate safety is one we need to have more openly, especially for young people and international students living away from home. Your experiences and insights could help others recognize dangerous situations before they escalate. And if you want to see more in-depth true crime investigations like this one, subscribe to Crime Scene Exposed and hit that notification bell. Your support helps us continue to share these important stories and the lessons we can learn from them. Remember, behind every case we cover is a real person whose life mattered. By learning from these tragedies, we honor victims like Tammy and potentially prevent similar incidents in the future. Thank you for joining me in examining this heartbreaking case.